Hello and welcome to the Tank Club. We are on the PTS for the Lost Depths DLC and we're looking at the new gear sets for next patch, and there are a couple of good options for tanking. So we're going to take a little look so we can see what we're going to be using next patch. So first of all, we've got one of the new dungeons, Graven Deep, and in this dungeon we are going to get a new heavy armor set, Pangrit Den Mother. Now with this gear set we're going to get a couple of tank benefits here, which is why we're potentially going to use it. Now, the people that this is aimed at, really, is players that maybe do dungeons, but don't do trials. So if we take a little look here, for the 2 items we've got Healing Taken. 3 items we've got more armor. 4 items we've got Health Recovery. 5 items we've got Max Stamina. And then additionally, on the 5 items, when you block, you and up to 3 group members within 12 meters gain minor courage for 10 seconds, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 215, and this effect can occur once every 5 seconds. So what this is a Claw of Yolnahkriin replacement. So the Claw of Yolnahkriin gear set has been a staple tank gear set for the last 3 years or more now. So this isn't going to replace the Claw of Yolnahkriin set. It's going to be something you can use in place of it until you can do trials. So obviously Claw of Yolnahkriin can affect 12 people. This can only affect you plus 3 more. So this is going to be an option for people who haven't quite got into trials yet. And I think it's a really good option as well, because when you block, you're going to be able to provide this buff to your group. The problem is it's only a 12 meter radius. Yolnahkriin has a slightly bigger radius. I think it's 28 meters on Yolnahkriin. So you just taunt the enemy and it procs your Yolnahkriin buff. That's going to give minor courage as well. But I think this is just a really good set because people who want to start buffing their group, this is a dungeon version of Yolnahkriin basically. And it's procced very easily. It doesn't have any micromanagement. It provides a nice group buff. It's something that's easy to manage because you're already going to be blocking if you're a tank. So it's a very good set for newer players, newer tanks that are just getting into tanking. They want to start buffing. They want to start debuffing. They want to start adding a bit more group utility to their build. And you haven't quite got maybe the confidence to go into trials and stuff yet, this is going to give you the option of a good dungeon set. Some of the other things with Pangrit Den Mother is some of the bonuses, like the increased healing taken is generally something that's not that needed. You don't necessarily really need it. Like I'd much rather be having recovery or stats or armor compared to healing taken. So compared to Yolnahkriin, it doesn't quite have as much effectiveness because some of the buffs are not as good. The armor is nice, and then like the health recovery again is one of the weaker stats that we can benefit from it more than stamina recovery, but health recovery isn't that valuable. Unless you stack health recovery, you're not going to notice a slight increase of 100 and so health recovery. If that was magic recovery, it'd be absolutely perfect, but it's not, unfortunately. The max stamina is really nice, so we've got kind of 2 stats in there plus the group buff that are really good, and then 2 stats that are kind of okay, but not the best. So Pangrit Den Mother, great set for newer players that want to start using minor courage and bring in minor courage to their group. So give this a little check on the next patch from the Graven Deep dungeon. Okay, onto the monster set. So we've got the Gatekeeper monster set. This is from Graven Deep as well. And this is going to give us a stamina recovery, which isn't that useful. And the 2 items, when you use roll dodge, create a husk after you roll. While within 5 meters of the husk, it will absorb all direct damage attacks against you. After 1 second, it explodes and deals poison damage to all enemies within 5 meters. And this effect can occur once every 20 seconds. Now, on paper, not a great monster set, but in very precise situations, it could have some minor uses for tanking. Now, if you hear me out on this one, there are some places where people might roll dodge in panic mode, and this could save you. If we take a little look at this clip now of me in Cloud Rest, so there are certain situations, and the first thing that sprung to mind for me was Cloud Rest, and the reason why is because there's an overlapping mechanic situation that can happen in Cloud Rest where you get the portal cone combined with the heavy attack. You try to roll out of the portal cone and the heavy attack's channeling, the heavy attack hits you. For newer players, that's often quite deadly. You can die from that. because it's basically taking an unblocked attack, and it's a channeled attack, so it's going to hit you no matter what. Now, this is actually going to save you in that situation. So if you're somebody who is particularly struggling for Cloud Rest, for example, on that exact mechanic, then you could use this as kind of a fail-safe to save you. So if you take a little look at just how it works here, so all you do is, so let's say you're taking an attack, you roll dodge. It takes a delay. You have to wait till the roll dodge ends, and then the big AoE appears, where you rolled to, and then it explodes. So if you were in Cloud Rest in that situation, the portal cone's under your feet, the heavy attack's channeling, what do? You panic in. Well, you're going to just roll dodge. You could wear this monster set, you roll dodge out of the poison cone, and either two things are going to happen. You're going to get hit by the heavy attack and you're going to survive because the AoE has saved you, the monster set has saved you, or you're going to have finished the roll dodge mechanic and you're going to be able to just block it anyway. So that's the two things that could happen if you go into Cloud Rest and you have that overlapping mechanic problem. So really, really good for that one particular situation. There might be other situations as well, but the fact it only lasts for 1 second isn't ideal. I think if it was more of a duration on it, it would be better. But then you've got the problem of PvP could abuse the situation where they can absorb 100% of the damage incoming, and then they can just explode and do damage back. So I can understand it's only 1 damage because it would be too overpowered in PvP if it was much longer. But if we could get like 2, 3, 4 seconds out of it, where we can absorb damage for a few seconds because we're in a real sticky situation, that would have made this like unbelievable for newer tanks. Like if you think of a situation where you're taking a lot of damage and there's a lot of group members dying, you roll dodge and you've got like 2 or 3, 4 seconds where you're not taking any damage from direct damage attacks. That could be quite useful in a couple of situations that I can think of for tanks, and that would be like a real nice fail-safe way of survival. It's like, it's a useless monster set if you're not roll dodging. It's useless for 19 seconds, but that one moment where you need it and you can roll dodge to survive, it would have been kind of a nice idea. But generally, so this isn't going to be something you're going to use a lot because obviously it's not that strong. It is only 1 second of absorbing damage, but if you are a tank who is struggling in a very precise situation where you roll dodge, then you get hit by attacks, this could be something for you that you could use. Finally, we've got the monster set from Earthen Root Enclave, and this is another one that is a bit sketchy for us. So we've got increased offensive penetration, so 1, 4, 3, 5 pen, obviously not useful for a tank. But then the two items, when you deal damage with a heavy attack, after 1.2 seconds you deal shock damage to up to 6 enemies within a 7-meter cone on your target, applying major vulnerability to them for 7 seconds, increasing the damage enemies take by 10%. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds. Now, the only reason I'm even considering this is to combine it with Turning Tide. Now, if you consider the things that we've got already, so Nazare is often combined with Turning Tide to try and push up the uptime of major vulnerability. Now, how about getting rid of Nazare and using this instead and combining the two together to be able to provide that 100% uptime? Now, it does pose a few problems in the way that we are going to have to micromanage different things, and like you have to look at the benefits, the strengths and the weaknesses of both options. So with Nazare, you have to use an ultimate. The more ultimate you build up, the more ultimate you use, the longer the duration on the debuffs. When you use Nazare, you're not able to just extend major vulnerability, you're extending everything. So things like Minor Brittle, you remove the micromanagement of Minor Brittle because you can extend it to 25 seconds. So there's little things like that that you have to think about, because micromanaging Minor Brittle on a tank by using Frost Clench can be quite a lengthy process when you're having to cast Frost Clench every 4 or 5 seconds to maintain that Minor Brittle, and then you're having to keep up all your other things as well. So Nazare can give you a bit of a kind of an easier time to keep up other buffs and debuffs like Stagger, for example, and not have to worry as much about micromanaging things like Minor Brittle. However, you do have to kind of use a lot of ultimate to get a big timer out of your Nazare. So if you just use your ultimate on your 250, your 240 ultimate, you don't get as much of a buff as if you save it to 500. Once you've used your ultimate, you've then got to try and build it back really, really, really fast to use your ultimate again. So you can proc like Turning Tide, and then you proc Turning Tide with a Horn, and then you proc it again as it expires. You have proc Turning Tide, then you can back-to-back proc it again. So you can get like 60 seconds, and you can even get 100% uptime depending on how fast you can build ultimate. Like if you can build ultimate super quickly, then you can get 100% major vulnerability with Turning Tide and Nazare. However, that's very challenging to achieve that. But by combining this particular monster set along with Turning Tide, you are actually going to get an easier time, because you've got a block, you've got a bash, you proc Turning Tide. Once that nearly expires, your heavy attack, you're going to proc Turning Tide, you're going to proc major vulnerability with this monster set as well. And then by that time, you should have built up your Turning Tide. And the good thing with Turning Tide is you don't have to use it straight away. You have 10 seconds to use it. So you can align it with the time of this one. Okay, so with this monster set, you've got to understand that there are some situations where Turning Tide is not useful. So Asylum Sanctorium is a prime example. That boss does not hit frequently enough to get reliable uptimes with Turning Tide. This, however, you can reliably heavy attack as soon as the Protector dies, you heavy attack, you proc the major vulnerability. Even though the uptime is not as high by just using this monster set, it is a fail-safe option where you can replace Turning Tide in situations where you have to be hit and you're not getting hit often enough. You can use this instead because it's procced with a heavy attack. If you combine this with Turning Tide, you can get an effective 100% uptime of major vulnerability. It's very, very good. I'm going to do another video where I'm going to show you this in action and see what kind of uptime we're able to get. With the animation from this monster set, it is on a bit of a delay. So this monster set does have quite a cool animation, so it does take a second to activate the vulnerability, so that's something to keep in mind. When you heavy attack, you have to wait a second, and then when the bear comes out, it breathes shock onto the enemy and then creates the vulnerability. And as you can see, it works very much the same as Turning Tide, where you get the pink beam through the enemy to signal that they have got that active on them. So this is another fantastic option for tanks for next patch to combine it if needed. You do have to weigh up the options of, is Nazare going to work better for you and your group compared to using this monster set, but there is different situations where either or are going to be the better option, and it's definitely something you should consider using for next patch. So that was the new gear from the new dungeons that are coming with the Lost Depths patch. The gear looks really nice in some situations and for different levels of player, different types of tank, depending on what you are, where you are in the game, what kind of level you're playing at. And the monster set, that monster set especially right there, is a very good looking option as well. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.